Thanks, Rihanna, and thank you everybody for joining us. Well, good morning or evening, Peter and others, and welcome to what is our third annual Vincentian Values Week. We are once again delighted to have the opportunity to celebrate the extraordinary charism which we all hold in common and which serves as inspiration for all of the works in which everybody here is involved. Later this week, we're going to be hearing from several organisations. We're going to hear from Vincentian Care Plus, a domiciliary care organisation here in London, on their proactive approach, seeking out solutions to unmet needs in marginalised communities. We're going to be hearing from St Joseph's up in Edinburgh, just outside Edinburgh, an organisation serving adults with learning disabilities, on how drawing on lived experience for co-designing services can be baked in at a strategic and long-term level. We're going to be hearing from the Marillac Neurological Care Centre in Essex on the central importance of choice and control of people in care when serving those with brain injuries and with complex needs. And then on Friday, finally, we'll be hearing from our own central team at Dorset Charity Services on the findings of a new social care survey they've been undertaking over the past several months. Before we begin today, though, if we could just briefly reflect on a circular from Sister Francois Petit, the Superior General of the Daughters of Charity, distributed by Father Thomas Maverick, Superior General of the Congregation of the Mission, over the weekend on the 400th anniversary of St Louise de Marillac beginning her path towards the foundation of the Daughters of Charity. In the circular, Sister Francois highlights three paths on which each of us can embark individually, but also in collaboration across the Vincentian family. She refers to the path of listening, in which, like St. Louise, we must listen to the calls and the needs of our time. She refers to the path of missionary boldness, of a confidence in taking the first step despite the uncertainty of the outcome, and of an overriding commitment to the preferential option for the poor. And she refers to the path of trust, of faith both in God and in one another, and of a belief in the potential of collaborative works. Sister Francois concludes in saying, "Let us pray and act, for the Lord is bold enough to listen to us and to trust us." So bearing this in mind, let's turn now to our first speaker of the week. I am delighted to welcome the Chief Exec of Seton Villa, Peter Gardiner. Seton Villa is a project which I have never visited, and yet from everything I've read and from speaking to everybody who has been there and visited, I feel like I know the service very, very well indeed, and it feels both inspiring and, in a wonderful sense, extraordinarily familiar as a genuine Vincentian service. Peter and his team leave, from what I understand, to be an absolutely wonderful service, and today Peter's going to talk us through the theory of change, which drives his team and the service forward. So Peter, welcome, thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Oh, just unmute myself, or can you hear me now? Great. Okay, well, listen, thank you, Mark, and good morning or good evening to those of you who have joined in. It's a delight, really, to talk about Seton Villa's theory of change, because it really does underpin the way we seek to support the people that are part of our service. For those of you that don't know Seton Villa, we're a disability service provider funded by the National Disability Insurance Scheme. We provide supports, 24/7 supports, to women and now men in supported accommodation. And we also provide accommodation itself for many of those residents. And indeed, prior to April this year, our work was exclusively with women with intellectual disability in houses that were originally gifted to us by the daughters, but which over the last 3 years we have redeveloped on a knockdown rebuild basis. And so by the end of next month, we will have rebuilt 7 houses to the new NDIS improved livability design standards. And all of our women have now moved into that accommodation, which is very exciting for them. And our last house is going to be our first house for men. Having been a service since 1966 for women with disability, we're now embarking on providing this care also to men with disability. And our house in Coorong Street, over the road from the daughters here in Marsfield, is going to be that first house to be able to support men on a 24/7 basis. So that's just a little bit about Seton Villa. Oh, we have a total of now 40 residents. Recently, we acquired a service in Ryde of 14 families, 14 residents. We were invited to become their new support provider, following dissatisfaction with the previous incumbent. And that service provides support for both men and women in a cluster accommodation, only a stone's throw really from one of our houses, so very close. So that in fact was our first venture into supporting men, but one of our own houses will be home to men in the new year. We've got about 111 staff, just to put it in context for you, and revenue-wise, just over 12 million now, on the basis of the additional NDIS revenue coming in from the families in our new service that we've acquired. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot of Seton Villa. But of course, I wanted to sort of spend most of this evening just sharing with you how we empower lives with the theory of change. And I'm going to have a go at sharing my screen, so just bear with me while I do that. Here we go. That wasn't too hard at all. Awesome. So here is the Seton Villa theory of change. And I'd just like to spend a little bit of time just going around the circle here for you and then unpacking it, because this is the basis of what we're trying to achieve at Seton Villa. And it starts off, because citizenship and connection to society is a fundamental human right, we believe that people with disability should be embraced as valued members of the community. We provide an active support care model within our 24/7 residential settings, which leads to a sense of pride and high self-esteem through increased capacity and independence, resulting in socially valued lifestyles for the people we support of their own choosing. And that's our circular theory of change. Seton Villa has always been about connecting people and empowering lives. But a couple of years ago, we sought to articulate that a little more clearly and in a little more detail. And this is what you've got before you. The start of that there is around citizenship being and connection being a fundamental human right. In our environment, citizenship is more of an aspiration, I guess, than a reality for many people with disability. And yet, connection to people is a fundamental human right. And we are really keen to be able to support that fundamental right for the people here at Seton Villa. And citizenship begins at home. So that's just why it's really important for us to be able to display this and work this out in the support service that we provide for our women and men. And this issue of human rights and decision-making, which is a fundamental human right, are really key here. I'm going to introduce some tensions in this discussion that you may want to pick up with me in questions later. But all of the people that we support have persons responsible who have the prerogative to make decisions on behalf of their family member. So it is either parents or increasingly siblings as parents age. And they are the decision maker for health matters, for most matters concerning their life, in fact. And this whole question of decision making being a fundamental human right for people with disability comes into tension when you consider how families choose to make decisions for their family members. When I was running large residential centres for government a few years ago now, my role was to close large residential centres, and those of you in Sydney will know of Peter Island on the Hawkesbury River. Big Stockton Centre up in Newcastle had nearly 400 residents at one point in time. And my role was to close these facilities and to be able to relocate, transition people into more modern, smaller residential style accommodation. But there was a family group at Peat Island who was extraordinarily active, and they had a very articulate chairperson, Anita, who was a mother of one of the residents at Peat Island. And she and the other families were determined that the institutions would not close and that the security of their family members in the institutional care that they were getting would not be threatened. They were so caught up in the security and safety of their family members that they couldn't see a brighter future for them in a different place, in a different world. And dear Anita would write letters to the minister after every parent meeting, and I held them monthly for about nearly 2 years. And she would write to the minister and say, we need to close, these centres can't close. We need our residents, our family members to be cared for safely and securely. Do not close them. And of course, those of you that have worked in government would know that the minister's office would send out a request for a brief to me to write a brief about why we should be closing them so that the minister's office could write back to Anita. And that happened for months and months and months. I would slightly tweak the letters so they were a little more interesting. However, the issue was really important for Anita and those other families, that the safety and security of their family members was the very most important thing. Now, that creates a tension when the people we support want something different for their lives. We did eventually manage to close Peat Island, and Anita's son moved into a group home on the Central Coast, not far away from Peat Island. And having moved in for 2 months, he invited his mum, Anita, up for dinner. And he cooked her dinner. I got the most beautiful letter from Anita the following day, full of apology, saying, Peter, I am so sorry for the grief I've caused you over the last 2 years. You were indeed right. My son is thriving in his new house. He's learnt to cook, and he cooked me the most fabulous dinner the other night. And I just wanted to say sorry. Now, that story will stay with me forever. But it highlights this issue of that tension between family members and persons responsible making decisions on behalf of their family members. So at Seton Villa, as part of trying to embody citizenship, which I'm just defining as a person's strong connection to the rights, responsibilities, roles, resources, and relationships that society offers to its members. Honing in on the rights, the first one, we've developed some work around supported decision making, and I just want to read you the objectives, the objective statement from our policy, because it captures what we're trying to convey here. And it is that Seton Villa acknowledges that all residents have a human right to make decisions about their own life and to have those decisions respected. Seton Villa understands and affirms that there is no reason for a person to be excluded from the decision-making process about their own life. Seton Villa understands that not all decisions require assistance, and where they do, we will support residents primarily when they make significant decisions which have immediate or long-term consequences regarding their health or well-being. Seton Villa is committed to supporting residents with complex care and communication needs to make their own decisions regarding their life, and will provide them with the support necessary to make and communicate their own decisions regarding their life. So that's our policy position about supported decision making, because we really want to take seriously our residents' right to make decisions for themselves as far as they're able. But I need to unpack that a bit for you, because it just doesn't happen, as you will well imagine. There's a lot of work that needs to go into supporting people to make their own decisions. One of the key ones is to be able to understand how people communicate. So we've put quite a bit of work into developing individual communication profiles for the residents that we support. And the communication profile is unique to each of the individual residents and captures the ways in which I, as a resident, communicate with others. Now, it might be speech, it might be vocalizations, noises other than speaking, signs, gestures, behaviours. It might be objects or symbols or pictures, or potentially the written word. But for all of our residents, we create a profile to be able to understand how people are seeking to communicate with us in order to support them to make decisions. Now, we've got about 40% of our residents are not verbal or only very partially verbal. And so it takes a lot of work to be able to understand how they are trying to communicate their needs. Asking for food, asking for a drink, asking for more, asking for affection, for help. We work really hard at being able to capture all of the descriptions of the ways in which the people we support communicate. And then we use those communication profiles to enable us to support people to make decisions. Now, there's a lot of work in that, but we believe that it's really important because it is the dignity of and human right to make your own decisions. Once we've been able to articulate communication profiles for everybody and staff understand those, then we engage our residents in a My Planning process. And this happens at least annually, and it is linked to the NDIS planning cycle, but that's a little bit coincidental. We really do want to be able to have these meetings at least annually, often every 6 months, where we spend time with each individual resident, helping them to articulate or to communicate with us about what is important to them, what is great, what is not so great, what I like to talk about, what makes me happy, how am I involved in making choices. And that's just to do with living in the Seton Villa home. And then we repeat that exercise in relation to their family and friends, their activities during the day, their health and mobility questions, and even their financial conversations for some. Once we've worked out what people are wanting to do, how they're wanting to enjoy their life, then I guess we go about seeking to put that into action and making those plans a reality for people. One of the ways that we do that is by helping people to go through a series of small steps to be able to achieve their goal. We've got a resident, Vanessa, in one of our houses. She's a woman with Down syndrome, limited communication, and she had a fascination with the letterbox. She was able to communicate to us through her visual looking, through her eagerness to, watch somebody go out and get letters. And we wondered whether Vanessa was trying to communicate to us that, you know what, she'd really like to be able to go and get the letters from the letterbox. And so we built a whole task schedule for Vanessa that we call Moments That Matter. And we do this for each of the residents in the house. Each identify some particular activity that they would really like to be involved in and to do for themselves. So with Vanessa, we built a whole schedule of tasks. Things, and I won't read them all, but things like collecting the key to the letterbox, walking to the front door, opening the front door, stepping outside the front door, walking down the pathway, and so on. Initially, all of these tasks are done with the active support of a staff member to model and to take Vanessa with them. But then that shifts to verbal prompts, gesture prompts, and then as each of these steps is achieved, then we can actually evidence them and sign them off on Vanessa's Moments That Matter record. It's a way that we can evidence the capacity building that we're able to support our residents to do on the basis of decisions and choices that they're making for themselves. It's time-consuming, but it's really powerful because it's actually acknowledging that the people we support are able to communicate some of their choices and desires and preferences to us if we take the time to understand their communication style, to listen to them, and to then be able to actively support them to learn that skill. Today, Vanessa goes and gets the mail from the mailbox for the house once she sees the postman drop the letters in. Great success story for Vanessa. 3 weeks ago, Vanessa went on a cruise. That was something that she wanted to do 18 months ago. And we had progressively stepped through all of the tasks associated with having a successful cruise experience and recorded those. And 3 weeks ago, Vanessa went on the most fabulous 3-day cruise. Now, back to my earlier point, Mum was not at all happy that Vanessa might like to go on a cruise. It was too risky. She may not get lost, but she might fall over. Who knows? Mum had all of these fears and anxieties about that. But gradually over the last 18 months, we've helped Vanessa to build the confidence to support her to do the actual tasks involved, and packing her bag and unpacking her bag in her room, all of the steps involved in supporting her to be able to go on a cruise. She sent back some fabulous photos. She had the most wonderful time. And again, like Anita, her mum, Val, was just so enormously grateful that we were able to support Vanessa in her desire to go on a cruise and for her to achieve it successfully. That was not only mind-boggling, but it was also such a delight for Mum. We have another resident, Susie. Susie's more verbal than Vanessa. She is probably in her early 50s. She has, for the last 20 years, been part of a supported employment program at a provider not far from us. And for the last 20 years has been packaging nuts and bolts and different bits of product as part of their supported employment program. It was the old sheltered workshop, but we now call it supported employment here. But Susie, through this My Plan process, was able to articulate, because of her love of handbags, that she would love to work in a bag shop. Not in a supported employment environment, but actually work in a retail store, in a retail handbag store. And because when she goes out into the community with her friends from the house, she knows exactly the handbag store she wants to work in. She's got it nailed. Just a top ride, not far away. And she communicated this very passionately as part of her My Plan meeting. And we embarked on the steps to be able to support her to do that. We were able to find an inclusive employment agency who had a passion about supporting people with disabilities into mainstream employment, because this would be a real job for Susie. This would not just be supported employment. This is mainstream employment, albeit perhaps initially for 4 hours a week, but maybe that might grow to 8 hours a week. And Susie has, with support, developed her resume. It has been sent out to the bag store that she's nominated where she wants to work at. And we're right at the point at the moment of Susie waiting to hear back about whether they're interested in meeting with her to talk about employment at the bag shop. Because she has skills from her packaging days in the supported employment. She's very good at unpacking things and packing things up. She would be brilliant in the storeroom at the bag shop, helping to unpack stock, put it into shelves, and you never know. Susie is a talker, and Deborah knows her well. She may yet get on the floor and actually live the dream of selling handbags, although I'm sure she would really like to keep most of them for herself. Susie has a lot to learn before she might be able to do that. But she's on the journey, as are the other residents in Seton Villa. And the really wonderful thing for Vanessa and for Susie and for the other residents that we support, this building of capacity and learning new skill really does develop a sense of pride and high self-esteem, as per our theory of change. It is a delight to see the joy on Susie's face whenever we talk about her new job in the handbag store. It really does light her up, and she will talk about it for hours. Now, of course, once Susie is able to acquire that skill and move into that handbag environment, she's actually connecting with more people in the community. She's actually moving into socially valued kind of roles. And that is actually helping her move closer to this sense of citizenship. And it's really special for her and for the other residents. But to go back to the beginning, it really begins with an earnest desire to support people with disabilities to make their own decisions and to allow them the dignity of risk. Because each of us in our day-to-day life manage risk all the time. But for people with disability, that's a real tough one, particularly, again, for family members, because the dignity of risk is the recognition that every individual should be able to do something that has a level of risk involved, whether real or perceived. Now, that has to be balanced with the potential impact of risk events. There is a lot of careful assessment that needs to be done there. But the principle of the dignity of risk is a really important one as we embrace this notion of citizenship. But it is a huge challenge for families whose principal concern is the safety and security of their family member. And look, we can all understand that really well. But I think that there is merit in striving for the dignity that comes from decision-making around your own choices and desires. And so that's our theory of change. It's quite powerful. We're finding it really powerful here at Seton Villa. And the conversations with families are ongoing. Fortunately, I'm building up a little bit of a repertoire of, you know, good news stories. You know, the Anita letter, the phone call from Val, all of those recognition by family that their family member, in fact, has the capacity to make quite a lot of decisions for themselves and be supported to make the decisions that are a bit tougher. It's a wonderful journey that we're on. And, you know, I hope that that is some food for thought for you and and some encouragement for you. And in fact, I think it's a nice segue to a couple of the other talks coming up later in the week. Particularly, St. Joseph's talking about, co-design for people-centered care. There are some segues from supported decision-making, into that space of co-design of services. Now, that's actually giving people with disability some decision-making power, which impacts their lives. And so why shouldn't we strive to support that? So I might stop there, Rhianna, and perhaps invite some questions, conversation, challenge.
Yes, absolutely. Should we stop screen share so we can bring it back?
Yes, I'll certainly do that. There we go.
Wonderful. I'll just bring you all up so I can see everyone. There we go. Well, I thank you so much, Peter. That was absolutely incredible. There was so much to absorb there, and that's something that everybody can take away and adopt in our day-to-day lives. I particularly love the moments of matter exercise that Seton Villa adopts. I think with Vanessa's story, going to the post box and bringing that really helps her. It brings a sense of dignity and pride to the residents. It's truly fascinating. I'm going to open the floor to see if anyone has any questions for Peter after that wonderful presentation. Please feel free to just raise your hand, or and I'll have a look to see if anyone's got any questions at all. Joanne?
Thanks, Rhianna. I don't actually have a question, Peter, but having visited Melissa and knowing her and her mother Val, it has given me a good idea to write Melissa a letter. Now that I have her address, I know the situation there. So thank you for that. I'll follow it up.
Are you thinking of Vanessa?
Vanessa. Oh, sorry, yeah. Vanessa. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, Vanessa does at Lavender. Yes.
Yes.
She'd love to show you photos from the cruise.
Oh, good. She loves recipe books too.
Anybody else? Deborah?
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Of course, I've had the incredible joy of walking with Peter and the residents of Seton on a regular basis. But Peter, I think you quickly said we're just about to finish building our 7th house, but I think that's also been a place where and at that point they have been the women in the current 6 houses have been involved in decorating, and the houses are really designed for them. Maybe if you could just share a little of that.
Sure. So yes, as Deborah says, each of the houses were individually decorated, and the residents moving into those houses had as much choice as we could get from them about what they would like to see in their new home. For example, they would choose the colours of their bedrooms within a fairly broad palette. So they were able to exercise choice, and they would point to the swatches and say, "Yeah, I'd like that colour." They would point to items of furniture that my participant experience lead Rhonda would put together to be able to get some idea of what sort of decoration they would like in the house, what style of clock, for example, the furniture, the dining table, the chairs. So we try to give those women as much say in the living environment that they're going to be involved in as possible. And that is as you rightly pointed out, Deborah, that is all part of, you know, supporting the decision making of the people we support in the houses. The house that is almost completed for fellas, Rhonda is the palette for that is a little more blokey. In fact, I love it. It's a sage green house interior. But of course, the men will still choose their own bedroom colours. But the flooring and, you know, the light fittings and things that have to kind of go in now will be a little more appealing to fellas rather than women. But when the fellas come in, they will name the house. So the women were involved in naming the houses that they've come to live in. We will give that opportunity to the blokes that come into the new house over in 1 Coorong Street, and they'll also have a say in the furnishing of that house as well.
Thanks, Peter.
Sister Eileen?
Divine. So, hi, yeah, I'm actually with Sister Eileen. I'm Siobhan and I work with Sister Eileen here in Mill Hill. I've listened to it and I've just been blown away. I actually have a 27-year-old disabled daughter, and I'm actively, although here in London it's a bit slow, but I'm actively trying to get her into supported living, which I seem to be completely different to what most parents are doing. Like you suggested, they're frightened and they're worried and they've got concerns. But I will definitely, as I continue to try and get something for her, I'll definitely take on lots of these information that you gave, because it is just so valuable. I mean, she went to the most incredible secondary special school here in London, where they were out of class most of the time. They were out on buses. They went to the library. And I feel really strongly that disabled people should be part of the community. They need to be out and about. They need to be able to do as much as they can. And, you know, neurotypical people really need to be more accepting, understanding of, and patient about when these people are out and about, because to them it's massive. Even like you're saying, the stages you take to go to a post box, we take that you know, as just without any thought. But it's really, we're all doing the best we can for people we know who are disabled, but we could really try and educate the public more to be more understanding, patient and accepting. But small steps and we'll get there. But your talk and everything you did was really, really empowering. So it was great to be part of it today.
Oh, look, thank you so much for that. It really is a big paradigm shift for providers and for families to move away from caring for a family member, just caring for a person we support, to actively supporting them to make decisions, to live the life that they want to live it. It's a huge paradigm shift. And look, we haven't got it right at Seton Villa. Staff still get caught up in, oh, look, it's easier if I do the vacuuming. It will take too long to get the resident to, you know, and yet the resident is standing there wanting to help. So let's take the cues. Let's listen to the residents wanting to participate and take the time to understand how we can support them to make that contribution in their own house. But thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Are there any last minute? Jim?
Rihanna, you're breaking up quite badly where I am.
Jim O'Connor?
Thank you very much, Peter, for your presentation and your talk. At the heart of it was your total concern for for the individual and the care of the individual, and the respect for the unique dignity of the individual. And the other very Vincentian quality that was coming through was the continual looking and searching for ways to improve the support for the individual, and take risks in doing so, and be courageous in doing so. So thank you for that. My relationship here is that I'm a trustee with the Daughters of Charity Services in England, and you may be familiar with the spread of services that we have, in many ways akin to what you're doing. I've got a whole number of questions going around in my mind, really. One of them is about what I would call a corporate relationship with the Daughters of Charity, i.e., are you legally independent? I wonder, and then following on from that, how you shall I say, how you nourish the charism, the Vincentian charism, within your organization. I can see it expressed in what you do, but how it's nourished among all of the people that you interact with.
So thank you for the question. Seton Villa is a company limited by guarantee, so it is its own legal entity. That was made back in 1990, but we are a work of the Daughters, and our constitution is a constitution given to us by the Daughters of Charity. So whilst we are our own legal entity and have our own board of directors and operate as a not-for-profit agency, we still have that very strong link back to the Daughters through our constitution, but also through Sister Deborah as trustee and director on our board. It's enormously valuable to have Deborah on our board, not only to continue to bring the charism of the Daughters to the board meetings and the decision-making of the board, but she takes great opportunities to speak to staff about the charism of the Daughters. Recently, I mentioned earlier that we've just taken on a new service of 15 families and probably about 35 staff. And a few weeks ago, Deborah came and gave a presentation around the charism of the Daughters and the life of Vincent and Louise and how, Anne Seton. That was really well received and wonderful for my new staff group to understand where the values of Seton Villa have come from and the links to the Daughters and the Vincentian family. So Deborah is a key link as trustee and board member in that space. Does that help?
It does. It does indeed. Would you say that Seton Villas is recognised as a Christian charity?
We are certainly recognised as a charity broadly within the Catholic family. So the spirituality is clear. I would have to say there would probably only be a fairly small number of staff with Christian faith. However, there is quite a spirituality amongst the staff such that they're very open and receptive to the teaching of St. Vincent and Catholic social teaching. And so I, as a person of faith, like to take those opportunities, to pray with my staff, to be able to encourage them in, the gospel. That's important to me personally as part of my leadership style. So Seton Villa would be perceived as a work of the daughters, and thus, Christian.
Thank you so much.